I'm leaving the Sao Paulo Mall. I left the United States. I left Florida. I couldn't take it anymore. You can see the Brazilian flag in the background. I finally cut the cord and I left. And I know many of you are very pleased with that. With that being said, happy Thanksgiving. It's a great day here in Sao Paulo, and I'm gonna flip this around to show you a little bit about what it's like. And I've been warned, in Sao Paulo, you're not supposed to make yourself a target by walking around creating YouTube content showing off an iPhone. Probably not a smart move. So the fact that you can see it's not lit up, but I'll pop in some pictures that are. The area that I'm staying in is very safe, and frankly, I feel like I've been in much more dangerous cities. But being 6'2" and 220 has its advantages, and I'm not particularly concerned about whatever those risks might be. But there are some obvious things that I do want to speak about, because it is very clear to me that some of the changes and some of the growth that has happened here is very likely to happen where I live, and I want to share about that too. Now, you probably can't help but notice, but it is gray, overcast, and although there's some significant traffic on one side of the street, it's pretty gray out. And prior to us landing here, it was record-setting temperatures. It was in the hundreds. It was extremely hot, so hot in fact that I believe during the Rio de Janeiro, I'm sure I'm going to get butchered for mispronunciation, but I'm a gringo, so I get away with it. Nonetheless, a few, I think it was either one fan or several fans, died at the Taylor Swift concert because of the heat. And there may have been some contributing factors too. I don't know the whole story, but I do know that it's not as hot as it was just this past week. And that's good for us, because breaking news, we are surprising our kids. We are actually going to be going to the Taylor Swift concert here. Now, hoping the weather holds up. I doubt that we're going to have any fatalities, at least in our family. And I pray to God nobody has any either. I mean, it's a terrible tragedy. I'm not trying to downplay that. But the weather is a heck of a lot better. It's a heck of a lot cooler. But as an American here on Thanksgiving, so happy Thanksgiving to everyone. I hope you've got lots to be grateful for and lots to give thanks for. I know I do. I thank you all for watching, and I especially thank you for subscribing, so do that now. But there are simply some obvious things that I noticed that I want to talk about, because when I went to Panama, I did a video talking about what it's like to live in Panama and how friendly and easy it was for an American to fit in over there. And while I haven't really had a hard time fitting in here, it is very obvious that I'm an American. It is very obvious that I am a gringo. It is very obvious that I could be a target. But I should point out, there is a difference in currency, and your dollar does go further here, but there is massive inflation. There is tons of corruption. There are all kinds of issues with the government that are different, but similar to what we're experiencing back at home. And while by and large, almost everyone I met was extremely friendly, extremely nice, I was able to navigate the language barrier in most instances by simply using body language and hand signals, or worst case scenario, Google Translate. But like any big city, I know that I need to be aware of my settings. I've got to have situational awareness. I must have my head on a swivel, and I've got to employ common sense. And the Christmas tree lights are on now, but I don't speak the language. I don't speak Portuguese. And when I visited Panama, it wasn't an issue whatsoever, because most people speak English. And everybody uses the dollar, but that's not the case here. And candidly, at no point did I actually feel like a target, up until I turned on my phone and started to create content, and then suddenly everyone looked at me like I had horns growing out of my head. At that point, I did become, I don't know if it was a target, but I certainly became the center of some folks' attention, because not many people are creating content using a gimbal and some of the things that I use. So I definitely stood out. And you don't want to stand out in a city where there's a high population of those who have and those who don't have. because although you can't really tell here, there are areas that are very crime-ridden. There are areas that are much more dangerous. And to be abundantly clear, that exists everywhere. There are bad folks everywhere, and there's disparity of income in most places. But it only took a quick Google search to learn that I was doing many of the things they tell you absolutely do not do, or you're going to get jacked. Which again was not my experience, so I've got that to be thankful for on this wonderful Thanksgiving evening. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I'm not particularly scared of big cities or really much of anything, and so far I haven't experienced anything that really raised my eyebrow or made me feel unsafe or uncomfortable. We did go, and right now we are in essentially suburbia, but we did go into downtown Sao Paulo. We did do some touristy things. We did have a lot of fun. We met with family and had a great time. I'll pop in some of that video here. But it was obvious we are in a big city, and when I'm with my two girls that are 8 and 10, I do feel a heightened sense of concern to not look like a target, to not demonstrate any type of fear or uncertainty or uncomfortability with my set and setting. And I've traveled the world. I've been to Manila. I've been to the Philippines. I've been to plenty of big cities. And my favorite city is New York. And I enjoyed New York when I was a boy, when I was growing up. Going into the city during the 70s and 80s was a hell of a lot of fun. It was also a hell of a lot more dangerous than what it became when it became Disney-fied and when it became very safe thanks to Rudy Giuliani. Now, after the pandemic, things changed, and I know there's been an uptick of fear and security, and New York has certainly changed compared to what it was previous to that. But look at what California did. California was a flaming dumpster fire, San Francisco specifically. And Xi Jinping comes to town, and all of a sudden, the city is spotless. And there is no homeless problem, there is no crime problem, there is no any problem, because the fancy people were in town. Which tells me that Gavin Newsom doesn't really care much about his citizens. He cares more about the Chinese leader, who he's here to impress as he continues to not run for president. Now, I'm not going into a big political speech here. That's not what this is about. But while we were visiting friends and family, and we were in a safe part of Sao Paulo, I couldn't help but notice the security that every single home had. And we're talking about electrified fences, we're talking about razor wire, we're talking about high walls, we're talking about insane security compared to anything that I'm used to in Florida, or really anywhere in the United States, which doesn't make one better than the other. It just is what it is. And I couldn't help but notice. And then similar to that, I can't help but notice that 1 real, which is the Brazilian form of currency, is worth $5 US. And I can't help but be concerned as to what the value of a US dollar will be in the future. But here, currency devaluation is real. And here, crime is real. And while we're not exactly near the favela or impacted by what goes on there, because where we're staying is much nicer, we drove through some areas where we could see it, and I'll pop that in too. And what you see is house upon house upon house upon house. And house is not the right word. Shack upon shack upon shack upon shack. And I'm not talking about Shaquille O'Neal here. I'm talking about millions of people living in poverty. And to put that into perspective, Sao Paulo has something close to 22 million people who live here. That's what the population is. Broward and Palm Beach County combined have something close to 2 million. And if you've been watching for a while, you know that I've talked about the fact that there is no land to develop. And while that might be true with the rules as they are, with the population as it is, here, there's no more land to develop. Everything is going up. All new construction is going up. There's an insane amount of new construction, which I don't believe any of the local residents can afford, but there is massive construction, massive development, and yet there's massive infrastructure fails everywhere. And I learned firsthand from my family that one of these trains, which has been under construction for something like 20 years and looks like it's almost done, is still not done. And most of those stations that aren't done are just completely filled with homeless folks, which is sad. But the crime here is real, and I'm taking it back to Taylor Swift, and yes, I'm a Swiftie dad, and yes, you can make fun of me now. But the reality is, a fan died, and Taylor postponed her next concert. I think it was postponed a day, it might have been two, but she only did it 30 minutes before her scheduled concert, which meant there was something like 60,000 people that had to leave the arena. Which probably doesn't sound like that big of a deal. I mean, I'm sure it's a major inconvenience to anybody that was there, but it certainly wouldn't seem like a life or death situation to me. But here it is. And that simply would never have occurred to me. But what actually happened is, as people were leaving the stadium, the gangs that are in the local area proceeded to surround the exit doors, and hand in hand, locked arm in arm, an army of them proceeded to rob everyone blind, guns blazing in the air, terrorizing, terrifying the fans as they were leaving the concert. And they had their watches, they had their valuables, they had their money, their wallets, their passports, God knows what. They had everything on them of value stolen at gunpoint. And the police were nowhere to be found. And I'm not here to pass judgment on whether the police are corrupt or on the take or what the deal is. I just know there was no 911 response. There were just a lot of folks who were robbed blind and terrorized during the process. And I haven't followed the story close enough to know if anyone was killed or not. I pray to God not. But it does open my eyes to the fact that this is definitely not the United States. And while yes, we are extremely fired up to go to the concert and see Taylor Swift, and I suspect we'll be fine, we won't know for sure until tomorrow. So please stay tuned. I hope you enjoyed this video. Subscribe to the channel, and until next time, peace.